Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatiruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. We continuing to read from this wonderful verses spoken by Srila Prahlad Maharaj, the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're reading the purports of text 23 and 24 of the fifth chapter of the seventh canto. The chapter is entitled Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. I know the devotees have been reading these verses for the last 8 days or so. But we'll read the verse again so that just is some context. And we will not read all the word-for-word translations. We've read it all last few days. But we'll at least read the verse, read the translation, and then we'll focus on the concept of dasyam today. That's the topic for today. So I'll just read the verse a couple of times. So those of you who are willing to follow, you can follow along. Shri Prahlad Vacha Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atmanivedanam Iti Pumsarpita Vishno Bhaktirshena Valakshana Kriyeta Bhagavatyadha Tanmanyetitamuttamam Shravanam Kirtanam Vishno Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atmanivedanam Iti Pumsarpita Vishno Bhaktishyena Valakshana Kriyeta Bhagavatyadha Tanmanyedhitamuttamam. I'll read the translation. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prahlad Maharaj said, hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto him. In other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he's acquired complete knowledge. And I'll read from the purport around Dasyam. The devotees have read the purports until then, so this is all the way towards the end of the purport. Prabhupada speaks about a lot of the other concepts in great depth. He touches Dasyam and gives a short purport, so we'll read that. Number 7, Dasyam. There is the following statement in regard to assisting the Lord as a servant. After many, many thousands of births, when one comes to understand that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, one can deliver others from this universe. If one simply continues to think that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, even without performing any other processes of devotional service, he can attain full success. For simply by this feeling, one can perform all 9 processes of devotional service. Very short and sweet elaboration of this concept of dasyam, where Srila Prabhupada is saying that if one simply continues to think he's an eternal servant of Krishna, even without performing any other process of devotional service, he can attain full success. For simply by this feeling, one can perform all 9 processes of devotional service. So, a few points summarizing some of the previous purports as well, where Prabhupada says all 9 of them, or any one of them, can be performed to consider that the devotee is performing devotional service. So it doesn't mean that we have to perform all 9, but any one of these 9 is sufficient. And Srila Prabhupada is specifically stressed that hearing is the most important because it's the first step. Without hearing, you cannot do anything else. If you don't hear, it's not possible to chant, it's not possible to remember, because what will you remember? You haven't heard anything. And so all the other processes begin with hearing, Shravanam. So Shravanam, Kirtanam go together. So when you chant, when you hear, you also have the tendency to want to chant. And when you chant, you can hear as well. Just like, if you have a house and you have many rooms in the house, which room is the most important? Well, if you cannot enter the house, then it doesn't matter which room is important. So similarly, the hearing process is the one that allows you entry into this whole process of devotional service. Everything begins with hearing. So that's why hearing is stressed by Srila Prabhupada. But he does say in the purports that any of these processes are equally beneficial for us to practice devotional service. And this concept of dasyam, becoming a servant of the Lord, is what we're speaking about here. And in this context, I would like to read one more verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And devotees, all the devotees know this verse. This actually appears in the Madhya Lila, the 13th chapter. This is text 80. So for those who are following along from the Veda base, I'll just put it on the chat so you can perhaps click on it or follow it. This is the Naham Vipro verse. The devotees, mostly devotees know this verse. So I will chant this verse, and devotees can also follow along. This is a long verse, and it's actually in a very specific meter. And this meter, a little digress on the Sanskrit meters. There are many Sanskrit meters that all the verses are, and most of the verses in the Bhagavatam and certainly in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita are in this Sanskrit meter called Anushtup Chanda. Anushtup Chanda is a 8-syllable 4-line meter, which is 32, essentially 32 syllables. Just like, for instance, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matma bhajante mam bhuta bhava samamita. This is 8888, 32. Or you can look at sarvadharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tam sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami masucha. This is the most common meter in the Vedic literatures. The 8888, 32 is called Anushtup Chanda. And there's something called Trishtup Chanda, which is 11, 11, 11, 11, and it is 44 syllables and 11 in each line. There are a few in the Bhagavad Gita as well, like Karparnedosho Pahatasvabhava Prachami Tvam Dharma Sammuda Cheta Yashreyashan Nishtam Bruhitanme Shishyasteham Shadi Mam Tvam Prapannam. This is the sixth verse in the second chapter of the Gita, where Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. So there are many such verses, Kavim Purana, Manushasitaram, those kind of verses are all in this Trishtup Chanda. And the Srimad Bhagavatam has many verses in the Trishtup Chanda. This 11, 11, 11, 11. A lot of the prayers are in Trishtup Chanda. Specifically when it comes to the mood of prayers, that's in the Trishtup Chanda. Now this meter is a little different meter. It's called Manda Kranta. It's essentially 17 syllables per line. And Manda Kranta literally means, think of like a brook or a creek that's flowing. Sometimes it flows slowly, sometimes it flows fast. And so this meter goes like that. And so it's chanted in a specific way that it's musical, and it's sometimes it speeds up, sometimes it slows down. So I'll chant this. And the reason I gave you this idea of this meter is that when you understand the meters, then it's easier to chant the Vedic mantras and similar Vedic literatures. So this 1380, uh, it's Naham Vipro Nacha Narapatir Napi Vaishyo Na Shudro Naham Varni Nacha Grahapatir No Vanasto Yatirva Kintu Prodhyam Nikala Paramananda Purna Mritabdher Gopi Bharatur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa. And I'll chant it a little slowly so devotees can chant after me if they wish to. Naham Vipro Nacha Narapatir Napi Vaishyo Na Shudro Naham Varni Nacha Grahapatir No Vanasto Yatirva Kintu Prodyan Nikhila Paramananda Purna Mritabdher Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa. Anybody inspired to chant this verse? Yeah, I'll read the translation. This is Lord Chaitanya himself speaking. Lord Chaitanya says, I am not a Brahmana. I am not a Kshatriya. I am not a Vaishya or a Shudra. So he says, I'm not one of the four uh, varnas of the ashramas. Nor am I a brahmachari, a householder, a vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. So Lord Chaitanya is saying he's not considering himself a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. He doesn't consider himself a brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprasthi, or sannyasi. So what is he? Now he says, I identify myself only as a servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of universal transcendental bliss. He's always existing with his brilliance. So this last verse where the last line of this verse where Lord Chaitanya says, Gopi Bharatur. Gopi Bharatur means one who is the maintainer of the gopis, the husband of the gopis. Padakamalaya, or lotus feet. Dasa Dasa Anudasa. So I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Krishna, who is the husband of the gopis. So this is the mood that Lord Chaitanya exhibits as the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis, the husband of the gopis. So this exemplifies the mood of Dasya. The mood of Dasya, that one feels that he is a servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis. And how do you essentially embody this mood? How do you actually work in this mood of being the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis? And Lord Krishna speaks about this in the 13th chapter of the Gita, and texts 8 through 12, which speak about the process of knowledge. And all of you have read the Gita, where the Gita, in the 13th chapter, Arjuna is asking Krishna a few questions about what is the field of activity, who's the knower of the field, and so on. And as part of that process, Krishna explains to him that ultimately the living entity, the soul, the Atma, is the knower of the field of activity, and the body is the field of activity. And there's yet another knower who's a super soul who's also sitting within the heart. And one who knows this, and that is knowledge. And the process of knowledge is explained. And the first thing that Lord Krishna says in text 8 is he speaks about amanitvam, adhambitvam, humility and pridelessness. So this is the process of knowledge. And unless we exhibit these qualities of humility and pridelessness, it's very difficult to have this mood of dasya or servitude, because unless you feel that you're subservient from a perspective of being humble and being prideless, then it's very difficult to offer service, because when you offer service, what exactly are you offering? You're offering your free will, right? So we all have free will, and we all want to do things according to our own concept of what we want to do. But when we become a servant, then what we're offering is, when we say we're offering service, the essential point of offering service is you're offering your free will. So rather than do what you want to do, you're ready to do what your master wants you to do. That is the whole essence of service, right? So if you're, and I'm a cook, so I can give an example of being a cook, that if you are cooking to serve somebody, then you will cook what that person wants to eat. You'll ask the person who you're serving, what would you like for prasadam? What would you like to eat today? And that person says, well, I'd like to eat this, and I'd like to eat khichdi, and I'd like to eat some pakoras for that, and whatever the person says. Then you're in your mood of service, you surrender your free will to that person and you make what that person wants. And then you may take a little bit of that after you've offered to the person you're serving, and then some remnants and some whatever is left, you honor prasadam accordingly. Not that you ask the person, well, what would you like to eat? And the person says, I'd like to eat this. And you say, well, but I don't feel like eating that. I don't feel like making it. So I'm going to make this because I want to eat it. That is not a mood of service, because you're not surrendering your free will. I'm just giving a simple example, but the idea is that when you offer service, the first thing you offer is your free will. You surrender the mood of wanting to do what you want to do, and you surrender to the mood of what the person you're serving wants you to do. And that is the whole idea of service. And that doesn't work without the idea of humility and pridelessness. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trunadapi sunichena taroriva shahishnina amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So considering oneself more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, offering all respects to others and expecting no respect in return. In that mood, we chant the holy name of the Lord. So that whole idea of servitude is not a minor detail. It is the fundamental essence of our Krishna consciousness. Once my spiritual master, Sri Radhanath Swami, was asked that you speak about this Pranadapi Sunichena Tarodiva Shashrina. That is the ultimate point of our Krishna consciousness. And Maharaj corrected him right away, saying, no, that's not the ultimate point of our Krishna consciousness. The ultimate point is Ashlishtiva Padaratam Punashtamam. That is the last verse of the Sikshashtakam. This Tranadapi Sunichena is the fundamental entry point. It is the fundamental requirement. Just like Srila Prabhupada used to say that the four regulative principles are not the culmination of a Krishna consciousness. They are the basic requirement to be able to practice Krishna consciousness. You don't, Srila Prabhupada used to say, you don't become Krishna conscious by practicing the four regulative principles. You become a gentleman. You become eligible to at least start practicing the process. So similarly, the concept of humility and pridelessness, the Trinadapi Sunechana, enables us to at least start practicing Krishna consciousness and get into the mood of being the servant, or the servant of the servant. It's not enough to just say it. And devotees, and I say this a few times when I speak to different devotee groups, that as practicing devotees, it's very easy to take on the lingo and the style of ISKCON, in the sense that we write letters in a certain way. Your servant, or your servant of your servant, you write all that in the letters that you write or email that you write, which is fine. That's a nice etiquette and all that. But we should also feel that way. It's not just a formality of writing in that way, that your servant, oh, I'm your servant. You speak that way, you write that way. That's fine, as long as you actually honestly trying to cultivate that mood. We shouldn't just leave it as a formality that we use when we write or speak, but actually start cultivating that mindset of feeling that way. And I'll give you an example from the Shastra as well. This is in the Ramayana, when Hanuman first meets Lord Ram and Lakshman, and they're in Kishkinda looking for Sita, and Sugriva is hiding in one of those areas of Kishkinda where he where he knows that Vali will not come, his brother will not come to attack him. And so Hanuman is his minister. And when the Monkey King and the spies see two personalities who dress like mendicants, they dress like forest dwellers in tree bark and so on, but they don't look like they're forest dwellers. They look very effulgent. They look like royalty. They have broad shoulders and strong arms. They look like Kshatriyas. They also carrying bows and arrows. So typically, forest dwellers and people who are mendicants in the forest don't carry bows and arrows, and they don't look effulgent. They don't look strongly built personalities. So Sugriva is wondering maybe these are people sent by Vali to track me down. So he asks Hanuman to go and figure out who they are. And of course, Hanuman is already a staunch devotee of Lord Ram, simply because of hearing. Now, this is again coming back to the point of, although Hanuman had never seen Ram and Lakshman before in this Leela, he had never seen them before. He had never met them before. This was the first time he was meeting them. But he had heard about them. Just like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, when the Brahmana's wives, that whole pastime is so beautiful. When the Brahmana's wives, when Krishna and Balaram ask the cowherd boys to go and get some food because they're hungry, the Brahmanas don't actually pay any attention. They just ignore the boys. They don't even respond to them. They don't even tell them no. They just ignore them. Krishna and Balaram say, okay, go and ask the Brahmana's wives now. The Brahmana's wives are so excited when they hear Krishna and Balaram in the forest, and they pack up all their pots with all the food and they rush to Krishna, not even caring what their husbands would say. Now, these Brahmana's wives had also never seen Krishna before, but they simply heard of Krishna's glories from the other cowherd women and others who would come and they would sell them milk and other things, and they would speak about Krishna. And so they got attracted to Krishna just by hearing. Even Rukmani, she just heard about glories of Krishna and she wanted to marry Krishna. So she wrote a letter to Krishna saying, well, please come and take me. So I'm in this precarious situation. So please come and rescue me and take me away. So anyway, so the idea of hearing is still prominent in all these aspects of these pastimes. So Hanuman has heard of Krishna, heard of Lord Ramchandra, and he comes and he asks, he offers his pranams to these personalities and asks them, who are you? You're so glorious looking and you don't look like you're mendicant, so you are wandering around the forest. Who are you? What are you doing here? And he introduces himself. He says, I'm the servant of Sugriva, and I'm here. So who are you? So Lakshman begins to speak. He says that there was this great king in Ayodhya, and Maharaj Dashrath, very, very powerful, very glorious, the whole Raghukul dynasty he describes. And this is the way in the Vedic system to introduce yourself. You know, you speak about your lineage, you speak about where you come from, and then you speak about yourself, as opposed to the modern system where you don't really care about the lineage. You just talk about just you, as if you dropped from the sky, right? So this whole culture of describing the lineage of Raghukul, the Ikshvaku dynasty, and then he speaks about, and that great king Maharaj Dashrath has this most effulgent and brilliant son, who's the Raghukula Tilaka, the Tilaka or the scion of the Raghukula dynasty, and that is Lord Ramchandra. So he glorifies Lord Ramchandra in that way, Lakshman. And then he says that, and it is my great fortune that this personality, Lord Ramchandra, considers me his servant. Now, Lakshman is also equally the son of Dasharath. Right? He's also a prince. It's not like he's just a servant. But see the mood of Lakshman, the way he introduces himself. And he's Balaram himself. And the way Lakshman introduces himself is he says that this great personality, Lord Ramchandra, it is my great fortune that this personality considers me his servant. So I wanted to highlight how, from a cultural perspective, how Lakshman introduced himself to anybody else who meets him for the first time. So this mood of servitude is ingrained even in Baladev, who is the first expansion of Krishna. Lord Srila Prabhupada would often say Baladev is the uh, exemplifies the servitude personality of Godhead. He's the personality of Godhead himself in the mood of servitude. He becomes the paraphernalia of the Lord. He becomes the bed of the Lord. And he even assists the Lord. And all these different rasas, if you look at uh, Vatsalya rasa or Shakya rasa or all these different rasas, there's always this prominent mood of dasya in those rasas. Even the friends of Krishna, their primary mood was to have fraternal relationship with Krishna, but also had servitude. They always wanted to serve Krishna in some way or the other. The cows wanted to serve Krishna by offering their milk. The gopis of Vrindavan wanted to serve Krishna by churning butter so that Krishna could come and steal it from them. The parents of Krishna wanted to offer their service to Krishna, and even the gopis, they wanted to offer their service to Krishna. So this mood of dasya is prominent in every other rasa. And practically speaking, the way we can imbibe this mood is to start thinking about how we can cultivate humility and pridelessness in every aspect of our dealings. And then Krishna will become merciful to us. And in that mood, our hearing and chanting will become more effective as opposed to mechanical. Right? So we can chant for decades mechanically, but we want to actually enter into the mood of chanting with feeling. If this mood of humility and this mood of dasya is not there. So those are some of the points on how we can think of this concept of dasya, and especially within our Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada emphasized this mood of dasya a lot. Humorous story, and I heard from one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada regarding Hamsaduta Prabhu, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. Um, his name before he got initiated was Hans Carey, and so he was keen to get initiated to have a different name. So when Srila Prabhupada initiated him, he gave him the name Hamsaduta Das. So he was asking Srila Prabhupada, what does it mean? How do you? He said, yeah, your name is Hans Carey. So you just add Duta after your first name, so Hamsaduta, and Adhikari. So add Adi before your last name, it becomes Hamsaduta Adhikari. So Hamsaduta Prabhu was thinking, well, I have the same name pretty much after I got initiated as well. So he was keen to understand who this personality Hamsaduta is. So in one conversation with Srila Prabhupada, many disciples were sitting and Srila Prabhupada was explaining the names of various personalities. Like somebody would ask, well, what does Rasaparayan Das mean? Then Srila Prabhupada would say Rasaparayan is one who, Krishna is Rasaparayan because he enjoys Rasa Leela. And so he was explaining the names of various devotees. So then Hamsaduta Prabhu thought, this is a good opportunity for me to also get clarification on what my name means. So he asked Srila Prabhupada, who is Hamsaduta? Prabhupada looked at him and said, you. So even that opportunity went away where he couldn't get clarification of who his name was. And then Srila Prabhupada said, the most important aspect of your name is dasa. Not what comes before, but what comes after. So we should understand that when we get initiated into the parampara, we are so and so dasa or so and so devi dasi. And that is the most important part of our name, where we actually are getting connected to the parampara in the mood of being a servant of the servant of the servant. And so this is such an ingrained part of our Krishna conscious culture. Sometimes it becomes mechanical, but it's really hard to practice the more nuanced aspects of Krishna consciousness if you don't actually imbibe this idea of being the servant of the servant of the servant. So those are some of the points on Dasya. I'm happy to answer any questions, or anybody has any comments or any clarifications or corrections, please. Uh, we can do that now. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I want to thank you for a very nice class.
Thank you.
And I have a few comments to offer. Um, yeah, Dasya, um, as you pointed out, is integral to all the other uh, processes of devotional service. It underlies all of them. It's fundamental to them, and without the mood of Dasya, it's not possible to properly render devotional service in any of the other rasas, or not without offense. So Dasya is fundamental. Um, and it's fundamental in another way, which is that it's not just a process of devotional service. It's actually our identity. It's actually who we are eternally. It is inseparable from us. It's the nature of the soul. Um, you quoted Lord Chaitanya from Chaitanya Charitamrita, a very important verse. Um, there he describes how he regards himself as servant of the servant of the servant. Um, he mentions the master of the gopis, even the gopis, even Srimati Radharani, though they are situated in Madhurya Ras, they regard themselves as servants. They're always thinking of themselves as servants, and they describe themselves as servants. Also, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, um, also the Madhya Lila, Lord Chaitanya says, Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti, Veda Veda Prakash, Sayamsha Kirana Yaiche Agni Jvala Jai, Sabhavika Krishnera Tina Prakara Shakti Hai. That it is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. Like molecular particle of sunshine or fire, Krishna has three varieties of energy. So, constitutional position of the living entity is one of servitorship. He is always a servant, um, whether in whether acting under the jurisdiction of the spiritual nature or the material nature, the living entity is always unavoidably a servant. So either one must serve Maya, one must serve one's senses, or one serves Guru and Krishna. But the function of the living entity cannot be avoided. That the essential nature is one of servitorship under all circumstances. Whether one chooses to accept or not, still you will always be a servant, and you cannot avoid that. So you either serve Maya or you serve Krishna. But if you choose to serve Krishna, then you are liberated. If you choose to serve Maya, you are bound. and you must suffer the consequences of your actions. So servitorship is fundamental to all of the rasas, and it's our inescapable and eternal nature. It behooves us to act in the capacity of a servant of Krishna if we actually want to be happy. Trying to act in any other way is unnatural, and we cannot be happy. Then we become like a fish out of water. It's not our natural environment. Our natural condition is that we are always servants of Krishna. That's the natural and happy condition. So, a very important thing, Dasya. It undergirds every other rasa. It must be there. Very important. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji, for your instructions. Any other questions or comments you have? Looks like there are no other questions, so we can end here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Hare Krishna.